I got drunk and slept with the top scholar, and my brother the emperor caught us in the imperial garden. He stared at the red mark on the scholar's wrist and lowered his voice, anguished. Even if you can't stand him, you can't raise a hand against him. This is the top scholar, the court's dignity. Your Majesty misunderstands. The princess didn't hit me. She just slept with me. Before I could open my mouth, Yu and Huey's cool voice drifted from behind. My brother yanked me behind the rockery and hissed, "Zhao Changning, what did you do?" I rubbed my hands awkwardly and explained helplessly. Last night at the banquet, I had a couple too many. On my way out, I ran into Yu and Huey heading out of the palace alone. I thought back to the imperial hunting grounds. That old grudge Wei scolded me in public, called me reckless. So in the heat of the moment, I had someone haul him back to my chambers. I sat in the chair, watching as I cursed him. "How dare you lecture me in public? You fake noble, fake righteous prick." But that face of his was just too handsome. He pressed his lips shut and said nothing. The more I cursed, the lower my voice got, and the more I cursed, the less I could hold back. I sobered up once in the middle of the night and looked at Yu and Huey lying under the covers. My mind went blank for a second. I panicked a little, but then I thought it over. My brother wants no harem of his own and loves being someone's secret kept man. 3 years and still not made official. I, a dignified eldest princess, merely slept with a top scholar. What's the big deal? This is just how my Zhao family rolls. So I made my peace with it. Reached out, wrapped an arm around his waist again, closed my eyes, and went back to sleep. His whole body went stiff, but he didn't struggle. By the time the sky was bright, I leisurely got dressed. Yu and Huey was awake too, staring motionless at the canopy. "Fine." I waved a hand. "Last night's matter. I'll compensate you for it." But before I'd even stepped out the door, I heard a clatter behind me. I turned to look and nearly jumped out of my skin. Yu and Huey had dragged a tall stool from somewhere and was standing on top of it, clutching last night's hemp rope, flinging it up at the beam. I lunged over to grab him. "Hey, what are you doing?" He looked down at me. I stilled as dead water. Only death can end this disgrace and grant your highness peace of mind. I stamped my foot in a panic. If he really died, the court censors would skewer me alive. I hurriedly asked if he wanted a grand 7-courtyard mansion. Yu and Huey stopped moving, looked down at me, his expression very strange, like he'd been doused with cold water. I seized the chance and kicked the stool over. He crashed to the floor, scrambled up, and went to ram his head into the wall. I clamped my arms around his waist for dear life. He kept charging forward, head down, stubborn as anything. "I'm about to be thrown out anyway. Think of your future. I'll get you a magistrate's post in 2 years, a cabinet seat in 3. Even as I said it, I felt guilty. Cabinet in 3 years, even my late father would scoff to hear it, but he really did stop. I breathed a sigh of relief. There was room to work with now. He stood panting, back to me, spine rigid, stunned. Then he slowly pried my hands off and walked to the table, picking up the little silver knife for cutting fruit. "This will not do," and he started quoting the classics. "A gentleman's honor, like white jade stained with dust. To live on like this is to be a walking corpse. Better a clean death." My scalp prickled listening to him. Finally he said, "Your Highness, bring me a brush." "What for?" He lifted his eyes, clear and bright, "To write my will. To state that I die out of my own broken honor. Unrelated to your Highness." The blade pressed to his chest. I didn't dare make a move. He talked from piety all the way to fate and marriage. I understand now. Is it that there's someone in your heart and you feel you've wronged her? Tell me who it is. I'll go to my brother, make her a county princess, guarantee her wealth and honor. The hand holding the knife wavered, and he raised his eyes. "I have no sweetheart," I asked again. "Then you," and he started reciting the sages again. Something about loyalty, undivided integrity, firm as a mountain. One line after another. I got a headache listening. Wealth. He didn't want a future. He didn't want a sweetheart. He had none. I was completely out of option. Then what on earth do you want? The words shot out before my brain could catch them. "Don't tell me. You want me to take responsibility." The second I said it, I wanted to crawl into a hole. He set the silver knife gently on the table, then lowered his lashes, casting a small shadow across his face, his voice so low it was almost inaudible. He lifted his eyes. "A word from your Highness is golden. His clear gaze settled on my face. After hearing me out, my brother laughed. First his shoulders shook, then his whole body trembled along, like he was utterly at his wit's end, like he'd gone mad. Out-shanging. You've really outdone yourself. He cursed me for a full incense stick's time. From absurd to outrageous, absurd as it was. A doer like Lu Yuanhui was exactly his favorite type. After cursing me, he turned and clapped Lu Yuanhui's shoulder, earnest and heavy-hearted. You studied hard at a cold window for 20-odd years, finally rose above it all, and become a princess consort. You'll truly be cut off from the court. Lu Yuanhui heard him out, gaze calm, and noted it. I am a traditional man. Since childhood I read the sage's books, no shame, value integrity. His voice wasn't loud, so this line sounded almost like a soft murmur. There are but two paths. First, I die, which ends my disgrace, and spares your highness a tainted name. Lu Yuanhui turned to me, his gaze steady. Or marriage. Since we have shared the act of husband and wife, we should bear the name of husband and wife. My brother choked, opened his mouth, wanted to say something, then swallowed it. He'd probably never seen a top scholar this stubbornly bent on dying. The air froze for a moment. My brother rubbed his brow and looked at me, his eyes saying, you made this mess, you deal with it. My throat went dry. I looked at Lu Yuanhui. There was no extra expression on his face. He just waited quietly. The very picture of you decide. I can go die at any time anyway. My scalp prickled. After a long while I heard my own voice come out flat and dry. I'll marry you. The moment I said it I stunned myself, listening to my own heartbeat. I watched Lu Yuanhui's reaction. He suddenly knelt and performed a perfectly proper bow. I thank your highness for granting it. My brother led us back inside to write the imperial decree. Lu Yuanhui stood at the edge of the desk watching, his eyes scanning word by word like he was starving. The brush tip moved, proved. He paused, then asked, Lu Yuanhui, do you have any objection? Lu Yuanhui thought it over. I do. I ask your majesty to add one more clause. For 3 years, the princess may not divorce me, nor cast me aside. On what grounds? If I am abandoned again, I will have nothing left but death. Here we go again. I shut my mouth fast. My brother rubbed his face and decreed for 3 years. The princess may not divorce him. The decree was written and stamped, consort. Lu Yuanhui received it with both hands, read it carefully 3 times. I thank your majesty for fulfilling it. I take my leave. He took 2 steps, then stopped, turned back to look at me. Your highness, by the rules, I should move into the princess's residence tonight. How? With that, he turned and left. Don't look at me, said my brother. You brought this on yourself. I craned my neck. I won't let him move in. My brother sneered. Then go ahead and try. See whether tonight he hangs himself from your beam, or rams your front gate. Lu Yuanhui moved in that very night. I deliberately put his quarters at the far western end of the estate, a whole pond and 2 rockeries away from my main courtyard, but there was no stopping his long legs. He came over the very next morning. I'd barely opened my eyes when I saw Lu Yuanhui holding a food box, standing outside the door. He handed over the box and carefully opened it. Inside were several exquisitely made pastries. I didn't take any, just stared at him. He hesitated, picked up a piece of Oz mother's cake and bit it himself. No poison. Then he looked up at me. I took the box. Pinch off a flaky pastry. I never said there was poison. Your highness's food, clothing, and daily needs. From now on I'll see to them. He stood there like a pine tree. Please tell me your usual taste in meals, and what you avoid. That piqued my interest. Fine. Want to wait on me? Raw or cooked? Neither will do. I counted off on my fingers and started rambling. He nodded. No mutton, no river fish, only steamed or braised. Fruit only if it's crisp. Anything soft and mushy, I won't touch. Tofu must be silken, shrimp must be shelled. The faster I talked, the more I watched his brow knit, bit by bit. A wicked little glee bubbled up in me. Top scholar. The sages never taught you how to handle a picky mistress. Finally, I finished and waited to watch his face fall. Lu Yuan Huey was silent for a long while, then smoothed out his brow. Understood. That actually left me blinking. That's it. No follow-up. Boring. I turned to leave. 2 steps in, I suddenly remembered I hadn't taken the pastry box. I stopped, wondering how to turn back without losing face. Lu Yuan Huey had already handed the box to the attendant beside him, who came trotting over to present it to me. I gave a little HMPH, took the box, and went inside without looking back. Word of it stirred up the whole court. Some called me absurd, even Mo sighed over the wasted scholar. The next day Elder Wang of the cabinet came. The old man was a 3-reign veteran, stubborn as a rock. Back at the palace exams, he dragged Lu Yuan Huey aside and praised him half an incense stick's time, calling him a talent for the nation. Now this national talent was to enter my princess residence, and the old man couldn't sit still. Yuan Huey, you fool. 20 years at the cold window, crowned the very moment you pass. This is the time to serve the nation. How can you be trapped in a back courtyard and throw away your future? The old man's words were harsh, but his voice was thick with feeling. He truly cherished him. This junior has failed your high hopes, elder. Yet, in this life, something matter more than a future. What thing? Without turning his head, Lu Yuan Huey glanced toward where I stood. I sidestepped behind a corridor pillar and peeked out from behind it, only to find he wasn't looking at me, but at the crabapple tree by the corridor. The petals were drifting down, and one gust of wind scattered them all over his shoulders. He didn't brush them off, letting that faint pink settle on his robe. Elder Wang's scolding grew blurry in the wind. Only the crabapple petals kept falling, scattering the ground with powdery white. Half an hour later, Elder Wang finally ran out of breath to scold, flung his sleeve, sighed, and left choking on his anger. The courtyard suddenly went quiet. Lu Yuan Huey still stood in place. He reached out and caught a falling petal, finally closing it in his palm, and I, hidden behind the pillar, thought about the look in Lu Yuan Huey's eyes just now. He wasn't looking at me, so this thing he said mattered more than a future. What exactly was it? I was genuinely lost, as if I'd never known him at all. That day, my friend Zhu dragged me to King Feng Tower to hear the peeper, his eyes prodding at my face. Out with it. I cracked melon seeds, but my mind was already far away. What's going on with you two? He pressed me. I lifted my tea and took a sip. Nothing. That's what, honestly. Marrying Lu Yuan Huey isn't a bad deal for me after all. It's not my splendid future on the line. You're really settling for it. His face is pretty nice figure, and he can run a household too. The decree's already issued. Can I even take it back other than being a bit too rigid? Always trotting out the sage's teaching. He's all right, really. Susan tersed twice. You'd better wise up. I keep getting the feeling the way Lu Yuan Huey looks at you isn't right. What's not right? He keeps a straight face all day, looks at everyone like that. Can't put my finger on it, but at those earlier banquets, I ran into him a few times trailing behind you. Isn't he always dodging away from me? He does dodge you, but every time you turn your back, he stares at you from behind. So what if he looks at me? I'm good looking, so what if he takes a couple extra glances? It's not lust for beauty, and it's not disgust or contempt. It's the kind of look a butcher gives the fattest pig in the pen. Susan got worked up, gesturing like an octopus. You'd better watch out. The dog that doesn't bite doesn't bark. The bland, honest-seeming ones are the most poisonous. After you two married, how do you get along? How do you live together? How do you take your meals? Can it really work out? Maybe it wouldn't. By the time I headed back, the sky was dim. I lifted the carriage curtain and froze. Why are you here? Lu Yuan Huey was sitting inside, a book rolled in his hand. I stepped up into the carriage to bring your highness home. Suzanne's words kept circling in my head. I sat down and tilted my head, staring at him. His profile flickered light and dark in the dim glow. His gaze stayed fixed on the scroll, never once lifting to look at me. He'd always been like this. Whenever he ran into me, he always lowered his lashes, bowed, and greeted me, polite and distant. Even that time, at the hunt when I chased a deer on horseback and nearly fell down the slope, he scolded me in public for being reckless, rattled off a whole long string of it. Yet even then he never met my eyes. I was so angry that my teeth itched. Just thought this bookworm was putting on airs. On a spiteful impulse, I stared at his profile. He still wouldn't turn his head. I reached out, gripped his chin, and twisted his face toward me. Our eyes met. His whole body went rigid. The book slid from his hand, landing on the carriage floor. He just stared at me, dead straight, not even blinking. His gaze slid down from my eyes, to the tip of my nose, then to my lips. He held there a long moment, then jerked away, his ears already burning red. His voice came out tight. This is against the rules. I am a traditional man. I went home and mulled it over all night, and the more I thought, the surer I was Liu and Huey liked me. Wasn't it obvious? I'm as fine as ever. Face, I've got it. Money, I've got it. Power, I've got it. Falling for me would only be human nature, but I couldn't very well go ask him outright. How conceited would that sound if it got out? This girl is famously full of attitude. I'm good looking. So what if he takes a couple extra glances? So what if he takes a couple extra glances? So what? Besides, he liked me first. Why should I be the one to speak up? I can't let myself be played. I decided to test him. Passing the study, Liu and Huey was reading. I sidled up, leaned against his shoulder to peek at the page, and even brushed against him on purpose. His fingertips holding the page tightened, his throat bobbing, but he shifted an inch away to the other side. Your Highness, this is improper. I had him come read me a storybook. He read it in a clear, even tone, no ripple at all. I stretched up my foot and accidentally touched him. He went stock still, as if frozen, and hurriedly stood up. Your Highness, I just recalled a document left unhandled, the words barely out. He'd already turned and walked off fast, robe hems trailing wind. I advanced one step, he retreated 10. Over a dozen days, I hadn't so much as touched a corner of his robe. I even laughed at myself, exasperated. Fine, Liu and Huey, you can dodge me. I went to the palace to find my brother. The moment I walked in, good grief, a gust of perfume hit my face. My brother was riding high, dressed to the nines, posing before the mirror in a peach-red long robe, with an inner sash cinched at the waist, looking extraordinary. The color suited him like he was dressed for a wedding. I scrunched up my face and grimaced, flopping into a chair. What do you know? Your sister-in-law likes me dressed bright and bold. That second Miss Huon he's been pining over had finally divorced not long ago. My brother's smile stiffened for half a second, then he puffed his chest out happily. Watching him like that, I didn't pour cold water on it. With second Miss Huon's temper, no way she'd be won over. My poor capped man here would likely stay one a while longer. I sighed and laid out Liu and Huey's whole keep your distance, wooden post routine in detail. My brother heard me out and said nothing, just slowly toyed with the jade pendant at his waist, laying dumb. You care about him, he said. What's it to me? If I like him. Anyway, you don't even like him, I retorted. Righteous. Why wouldn't I care? If Liu and Huey has fallen for me, doesn't that just prove my charm is unmatched, that I've got the upper hand? Just think, having even someone you despise conquered by you. What a satisfying thing that is. My brother's face looked like he'd eaten something foul. In our family, we don't call this someone you despise. We call it the destined love you'll wreck sooner or later. I couldn't be bothered with him and just had him give me a plan. Worn down by my pestering, he leaned in, lowered his head, and muttered for a quarter hour. When I heard it, my eyes went wide. Are you the emperor or a lecher? My brother said, dead serious. Your sister-in-law eats this stuff right up. I went home and thought about it for 2 days. Forget it. I can't go that far. I, Zhao Changing, have my pride. But then a thought struck and I cheered up. I could make Liu and Huey study it instead. Have him please me, wouldn't that settle it? I immediately sent people to gather a whole load of those books, spring scrolls, romance manuals, the work, and dumped the lot in his study, even thoughtfully attaching a note, study hard. I'll quiz you in 3 days. Liu and Huey came that very afternoon, carrying those books. The Hedgie studio on East Street. Is this not enough? I'll send someone to buy more. I kicked up a little for eating grapes, looking utterly indifferent. He lowered his head, turned, and left. Little Scholar's quite the eager student. The next day, the Hedgie studio got sealed up, charged with selling obscene material, corrupting public morals. Liu and Huey even came specially to report it. Face full of righteous gravity. Books of this sort corrupt the public spirit. I have had them all confiscated and burned. I was floored by him. Wow. You're really something. You're really something. He'd thrown his weight around, acting all by the law. What law of yours is this? What did the bookseller ever do to you? What did readers reading a little for fun ever do to you? What did authors writing a little ever do to you? My anger flared up. Racine goods. Corrupting morals. Racine, obscene, Racine my foot. Lofty as you talk. Haven't we two done it already? If reading a book is a crime, then we two should be in prison right now. Holding hands, Lu Yu and Huey's ears went red in an instant. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. The sage's teachings probably never covered how to handle this kind of mutually destructive, shameless bickering. He floundered a long while and finally found his footing. The act and the books cannot be lumped together. Books that circulate poison the minds of thousands of scholars. The hum is vast. Here it came again. The whole self-cultivation order the family govern the realm grand principle speech on and on. Like chanting scripture, but too bad quoting isn't all he can do. I can get physical. I didn't care about official robe or not. I grabbed hold and wouldn't let go. He pulled back. I yanked forward. The two of us went circling around the kota. I put my whole strength into one tug, rib, and the collar of his official robe tore clean to his shoulder. Half his collarbone laid bare and gleaming. Lu Yu and Huey reacted first. His face went white in a flash, then flushed red. Finally a mix of pale and red like a painter's palette. He abruptly raised a hand to cover his shoulder, knuckles clenched white. Lu Yu and Huey lifted his head and glanced at me, his expression very complicated, shame and anger laced with something else. Before I could make it out, he turned and left, strides quick and heavy, robe hems practically flying up. I chased after him, calling, "Don't be mad, I'll get you 10 new ones, 20's fine too." He rounded the corridor corner with his torn collar and vanished. The hating studio was secretly Zhu San's business. Everyone used to turn a blind eye to it. Only that brainless Lu Yu and Huey had to solemnly blow it wide open. I cut him some slack, softening the charge from circulating filth. When Lu Yu and Huey found out, he came to me with a long face. We had a row in the study. He said I was condoning the spread of obscenity by bending the law. I flared up the moment I heard it. "Oh, you sanctimonious Lu Yu and Huey in the whole court. You're the only pure one." The hating studio ran for 3 years, paid every tax it owed, creased every joint it needed to. Why did no one investigate before? You think you're the only one with eyes. It just had to be you. Newt office making your 3 new broom fires land on my friend. The rules are the rules. Your Highness's act is no better than those vermin. I laughed out of sheer anger. I am the vermin. My whole family is vermin. Only you, Scholar Lu, are pure as ice, and Jay, who can't stand a single grain of grit in your eye. Then you shouldn't have agreed to marry me. Shacked up with a vermin like me for life, he went speechless, chest heaving, his eyes oddly going red. Finally he flung his sleeve and left. I couldn't be bothered to chase. Be mad if you want to be mad. Who's coddling who? This cold war dragged all the way to our wedding day. In between he sent pastries 3 times, and I sent every one back untouched. The 4th time he came himself, stood outside the courtyard gate for half a watch. I didn't let him in. The wedding rites were endless, wearing everyone to exhaustion. When the feast ended that night, I was pleasantly tipsy. Susan and the others, laughing and joking, ushered me to the wedding chamber. A crowd squeezed up to the door. I reached out and pushed the door open, took one look, said nothing, and shut it again. Susan pounded madly on the door. Is it haunted? I caught my breath a couple times before turning to call out to them. As they hooted and teased, I pulled the door open a crack, slipped quickly sideways inside, and bolted it behind me. There knelt Lu Yu and Huey on the bed, his bright red wedding robe taken off, folded neatly and set by the pillow. He'd even bundled himself up with red coat like a rice dumpling. I stood at the door, sobered up. What are you up to? Lu Yu and Huey's eyes drifted, then forced themselves to settle on my face, his voice very small. I wished for your highness to. I stood without moving. He waited a beat and see no response from me. His ears reddened bit by bit, the flush creeping even up his neck. This dumpling was really poorly wrapped. The coat was tied a bit too tight. I walked over, my step soft on the floor. Faintly, I felt his breathing go shallow. I stopped before him and looked down at him. This face really was a good one. Then, like unwrapping a gift, I carefully undid the coat on the dumpling. Several hours later, Lu Yu and Huey let out a sigh. That sigh fell into the candlelight, like someone who'd walked a very long road and finally made it home. The words said and unsaid. Reckless, painful at times. Have you read yourself stupid? How dare you lecture me in public? You sanctimonious prick. Your Majesty, I am a traditional man. Since childhood I read the sages' books, no shame, as everyone does. Things have come to this. There are but two paths. First, I die, which ends my disgrace, and spares your highness a tainted name. Or marriage. Since we have done the act of husband and wife, we should bear the name of husband and wife. Your Highness, I just recalled a document left unhandled. What a hopeless H&PH. What a blockhead. The next day we went to the palace to give thanks. As we were leaving, my brother kept Lu Yu and Huey back alone. The two of them whispered inside for nearly an incense stick's time before the door opened. When Lu Yu and Huey came out, his ears were a little red. Seeing me watching him, he straightened his back at once, stiff as a board. In the carriage back to the estate, what did my brother say to you? He looked straight ahead, throat bobbing. His Majesty instructed me on how to keep a husband and wife in harmony, to live as a loving, harmonious couple. I was speechless. My brother can teach someone something this proper. Lu Yu and Huey has been a bit busy lately. A consort can't be a complete idler. He was handing things over to a colleague, transferring laterally into an easy, idle post. He went out early and came back late every day, passing documents to colleagues who couldn't read any feeling on him, whether he was content. I didn't know, but his family side certainly wasn't. Lu Yu and Huey's birth mother died early. His father remarried, dumped him on his grandfather, and didn't ask after him for over a decade. Now, all of a sudden, they'd come rushing all the way from the old hometown. As it happened, Lu Yu and Huey wasn't at the residence that day, so I was the one who received them. I've seen plenty of rotten parents. At the wildest, the year my father slipped my mother an aphrodisiac, my mother stabbed him 3 times and threw in some poison for good measure. What scene haven't I witnessed? But someone as laughable as Lu Yu and Huey's father I was meeting for the first time. He opened his mouth and asked for money, held out his hand for power, wanted a grand mansion to live in and a future arranged for his younger son too. In word and tone, the very picture of my son has married up, and the whole family ought to rise with him. I propped my chin up like I was watching a show, watching the two of them perform. They gave me the illusion that I have a very good temper. Just as I was deciding whether to toss them out myself or have the guards drive them off, Lu Yu and Huey came back. He stood in the doorway, no expression on his face, his gaze sweeping over his father and stepmother, finally landing on my face. Then he walked over, reached out and held his father up by the thick collar. His father wasn't tall to begin with, and lifted like that, his feet left the ground. He flailed twice and froze. His stepmother immediately shrieked. Lu Yu and Huey carried his father straight outside, like a flapping chicken. His father came to, cursing up a storm, his voice growing fainter and fainter. I raised my voice and asked, "Coming back for dinner tonight?" His steps didn't stop. His voice drifted back over his shoulder, crisp and clear. "Yes." I raised an eyebrow, sat back down, and drank my tea. When Lu Yu and Huey came back at dusk, I was feeding the fish in the courtyard. Handled. His voice was flat. I asked quickly, "How did you handle it?" He walked over and stood at my side. Signed documents. 2 copies. They take the money and leave, never to bother us again. My hand, scattering fish food, paused. "That's it." He looked at me, a hint of puzzlement surfacing in his eyes too. They agreed to money. Gave them a bit of money. 3,000 taels. A clean break. His sheer naivety left me speechless. With his father's face, a greedy pit he couldn't fill with a mountain of gold. From now on it'd be endless, ceaseless pestering. Lu Yu and Huey was still too green, didn't know people's hearts. Greed has no bottom. Or else, just pull it up by the roots. The moment it left my mouth I regretted it. How stupid. That's still his own father. Wretched as he is, still his flesh and blood. Who am I, playing king of hell here? I was just about to tack on a couple words when I saw Lu Yu and Huey go completely still. My heart lurched. Lu Yu and Huey suddenly took a step forward, raised a hand, and covered my mouth, quickly glanced around, then leaned down close to me, murmuring low against my ear. This kind of thing can be overheard. Saying it out in the open, he went quiet. I pried his hand away, about to speak, then stopped. His expression was grave. He edged half a step closer to me, his voice dropping even lower, like a thief. "Even if it must be done, it has to wait until night." So he really was considering it. Not considering whether to, but considering how to. That night Lu Yu and Huey laid out his plan to me in detail. I was dumbstruck. He composed himself, expression dead serious. "How can this be called using a borrowed knife to kill?" His voice was steady, and even like reciting a creed. "It's only proper. I'm merely letting the people who ought to know what they ought to know. What if they actually pay it back? They can't pay it, and won't. I'm the top scholar wed to a princess. News travels fast. The moment he entered the capital, the creditors set their sights on him. Say he has no money, who'd believe it? 3,000 tales won't fill the hole. The creditors will just think he's hiding a mountain of gold he won't cough up. And if the creditors bring your father to your door demanding money, Lu Yunhui lifted his eyes. I am the princess's man. Would they dare come provoke me? Well, Lu Yunhui. Quite the bully when you've got backing. Yes, I did it for you. Thank you very much. A month later, old Lu's letter begging for help arrived. The gist was that the moment they got home, the creditors pinned them down. The silver wasn't even enough for the compound interest. He'd sent someone to the capital to demand silver from Lu Yunhui, and they'd been cursed out and beaten. At the end of the letter, he asked Lu Yunhui to send some money. I didn't even let anyone bring the letter to Lu Yunhui. I threw it straight into the fire and burned it. My own little fool. Is mine alone to bully, as usual. Besides, the capital is mountains and rivers away from Langya. The road long by cart and horse, perfectly normal for a letter not to make it. Lu Yunhui found out about it 3 days later. That night, he tossed and turned, the bedboards creaking. I kicked him. What is it? He went still, his breathing heavy in the dark. After a long while, he finally spoke, his voice barely a sprout of sound. Do you think it was too cruel? I fell silent, a little puzzled. Does this even count as cruel? After a moment he asked again. I'm two-faced, scheming. Lu Yunhui, is being scheming a bad thing? In this world, the unscheming get gnawed down to bare bones, but how you are with outsiders is no concern of mine. As long as you don't turn all those twists and turns on me, you can have 800 schemes, and I'd be glad of it. After I finished, Lu Yunhui said nothing for a long while. I scooted over and felt for his face in the dark. My fingertips came away a little wet. You're crying? No, he said it muffled, and buried his face deeper into my palm. Sure, I picked at it with one hand, didn't call out the other, and reached over to pat his back. Come autumn, official transfers were frequent. Those who'd taken the exams alongside Lu Yunhui, their invitations came snowing into the residence by the thousand. Lu Yunhui, and I couldn't avoid attending banquet after banquet, feasting, lively crowds, toast after toast. Everyone's faces flushed with a rosy glow. A newly minted official, the one who placed just below Lu Yunhui, solemnly clapped his shoulders, sighing. To win a princess, and a powerful one, a beautiful one. His gaze drifted over, tinged with a touch of regret, mixed with something else, like looking at a precious jade screen set high on a shelf. Lovely, but no use to me. I turned my head to look at Lu Yunhui. He was intently shelling shrimp for me, with the table in an uproar. He looked at no one, just bowed his head, and when done, set the shrimp meat in my dish. He shelled them carefully, not minding the grease on his knuckles. I stared at those two hands. These hands should be wielding a brush, marking memorials, writing splendid essay. Yet here they were, shelling shrimp for me. Once back in the carriage, I asked him, being a consort, do you regret it? He started, turned to look at me, his face full of tension. You regret it? Before I could speak, he started rambling again. I was speechless once more. That little wave of springtime melancholy I just felt got blown to scattered pieces in an instant. Who said I regret it? I'm asking about you. Wasting it all. A dozen years of study at the cold window. You even passed as top scholar. And you don't even want the future, the prospects. No, truly no. No, he answered too crisply, which made me doubt it instead. Just as I was about to press a couple more questions, he suddenly raised his face, his gaze fixed and locked on me, as if he'd made up his mind about something. I sat the exams. Became an official. Placed top scholar. His throat bobbed, his voice dropping, but I couldn't make it out. I started. What? He didn't repeat it. I just watched the glow of the lantern outside slide across his cheek. My head was buzzing. We've met before. It took me a long while to come back to myself. He said nothing. What is it? Did I hit you back then? Huh? When I was little, I really wasn't the kind of saint someone would remember for a lifetime. Turning it over, the odds of a grudge far outweighed the odds of a bond. But rack my brain as I might, I couldn't recall ever having a chance to beat him up. Lu Yunhui was a Langya man. As a child, though I traveled with my parents on inspection to Kinju, I had never once set foot in Langya. When was it? Where? What did I do? He only pursed his lips, staring at the swaying carriage curtain, mouth pressed tight, like he was hiding some enormous secret held in a long time, now just barely poking its head out, yet he didn't know how to pour it all out. I stared at him the whole way, from the carriage to the residence gate, from stepping down to standing under the corridor. The question I wanted to ask circled on the tip of my tongue, round and round, but looking at that face of his, growing ever more refined in the lantern light, I suddenly forgot what I'd meant to ask. This face really was a good one. Even his walk had a stiff, upright air, which inexplicably gave off a faintly alluring surprise. I was bewitched by his looks for a moment. By the time I came to my senses, I'd already dragged him into the room. Your Highness, the servants will be bringing things in later. The sly, sweet thing, quit playing the act in front of me. Lu Yuan Hui was being coy, wanting me to be closer to him, yet refusing to say so. Just looking at you with those clear, bright eyes. That night I was so tired I couldn't lift my eyelids, yet he slowly pressed close, arm wrapped around my waist, forehead resting lightly against the back of my neck. He called my name. Groggy with sleep, I reached back and patted his back. I'm here, go to sleep. He was quiet for a moment, then, as if confirming something, Chang'e. I could only answer him again. On it went like this, until I lost my patience, pressed his head into my chest. Right here, not going anywhere. He let out a soft hum and gathered me closer into his arms. The two of us, heartbeat against heartbeat, beat after beat, steadily beating their way into a dream. Consort, tell me, when exactly did you set your sights on me, Your Highness? I'm not very good at telling these things. Fine, then we sleep in separate rooms tonight, Your Highness. Actually, I can give it a try. HMPH. Yuan Hui. Distinguished guests are visiting today. The guests have a son and daughter about your age. You should be warm. Don't always be so stern. But I still have to study. Yuan Hui. Grandfather is right, of course. Shaking his head, he walked out of the room. Within a few days the guests his grandfather spoke of arrived. The adults talked in the hall. Grandfather signaled for him to take the two children downstairs to play. The boy was lively, came over, and asked what he was reading. The girl looked at him with a pair of bright, shining eyes. The sage's books, naturally. Maybe they'd never met such a little fogy. The brother and sister exchanged a glance and ran off into the courtyard on their own. He breathed a sigh of relief, sat back down under the corridor, and kept reading. As he turned the pages, a commotion came from afar. He glanced up and nearly jumped out of his skin. That little girl was hiking up her skirt, climbing the old apricot tree in the corner of the courtyard. Left. Step on the thick fork. Lu Yuan Hui hurried over to stop her. How can you do this? It's improper. What if you fall? Before he finished, a green apricot dropped from the tree, landing right on his forehead. It didn't hurt, but it was cold. Don't yell, will you? If you bring my mother over, we're in trouble. Hey, little brother. Keep watch for us, will you? Just a moment. Lu Yuan Hui opened his mouth, wanting to say no, this is against the rules, but the way the siblings looked at him was full of hope, so he could only nod, take his book back to the corridor pillar, ears pricked, listening for sounds around him. That day, in the end, the three of them sat side by side at the well's edge, each holding a green apricot. The brother took a bite, and his whole face scrunched up. The sister bit one too, her little face falling, looking at Lu Yuan Hui all reproachful. He looked down at the whole apricot in his own hand. Your family's apricots. You've never tasted them. When they're ripe, the birds peck them all away. Or, you've never gotten to enjoy your own family's treat. Once they got used to the sourness, the siblings started giving him point how to guard against the birds, how to hide the apricots away. As they talked, the topic drifted off. Isn't there a lantern festival that night? Do you know where the liveliest spot in the city is that night? I don't. Grandfather rarely takes me out. That's all right. We don't leave until the end of the month. On the day of the Lantern Festival, tell your grandfather you've agreed to go out and play with us, the three of us together. It'll be great. They were dead set on it, figuring his grandfather probably wouldn't mind. As they were leaving, the little girl suddenly turned back and pressed another apricot into his hand. Watch over it. Don't let the birds peck it again. In the dozen odd days after, he studied especially hard. Lying in bed at night, he couldn't help counting how many days were left until the 15th. He thought maybe if he studied a little harder, his grandfather would nod yes. But before the 15th came, that family hurriedly left. The next year, in late spring, he was scolded by his grandfather and backed out of the study, head bowed. When he looked up, the apricot tree was full of green fruit, all hanging perfectly intact on the branches. He stared at it a long while. That night he secretly slipped out to the foot of the tree. The moonlight was hazy, his lone shadow flickering on the ground. He rolled up his sleeves and climbed up. He'd read a great deal, but climbing a tree was a first. His foot slipped, and down he tumbled, landing hard in the mud. The noise startled his grandfather, who was up keeping night watch. Seeing him in such a sorry state, and for no apparent reason, Lu and Huey knelt there, not making a sound. Had they left that suddenly, without even time for a goodbye? It was only much later that he learned that distinguished couple were the Emperor and Empress traveling incognito. My father slipped my mother an aphrodisiac. My mother stabbed him 3 times and threw in some poison for good measure. This fellow of mine, what scene hasn't he witnessed? It was only much later that he learned that distinguished couple. And the little girl who pressed green apricots into his hand, eyes bright as stars, was Princess Geahua. Zhao Changing. That day he held a leaf, not moving for a long while. The apricot tree outside the window had long stopped bearing fruit, leaving only bare branches, pointing silently at the grey, overcast sky. When he was 10, his grandfather died of illness in the moaning hall. White banners and incense candle, the smell choking. He knelt bolt upright, his mind utterly blank. His father, silent, lonely, harsh. The days and nights at the old Langer house stretched on without end. A person in a sea of suffering needs a little hope to cling to, but turning it over and over, he could only fish up this one small thing. A hazy afternoon, 3 little people sitting side by side at the well's edge, each holding a sour, bitter green apricot. At first there was no other thought, just the feeling that studying was hard. He'd wonder whether the 3 of them might ever have the chance to go to the Lantern Festival together to see Zhao Changing again. It was Lu and Huey. The year he was 18, on a capital street, some young good-for-nothing was galloping a horse through the crowd, overturning an old man's vegetable stall and raising his whip to strike. Lu and Huey hurried over when a figure stepped in ahead of him and snatched the whip away. The next instant, crack, a sharp sound, landing on the brat's face. "You little punk. Do you know who I am?" She flicked the whip, lazy on the surface, yet with a hidden, coiled foe. "I don't care who you are. Daring to bully the people in broad daylight. You're exactly who I'm hitting." The brat's face went white and he scrambled away. Lu and Huey stood in place, unmoving. He watched her toss the whip to the guard behind her, fish a piece of silver from her purse and place it in the old man's trembling hand. Then she turned and called toward where the brat had fled. "Let me catch you pressing the common folk again, and I'll break your legs." Lu and Huey, listening, suddenly felt something strike him in the chest, and slowly turned scalding hot. From the murmurs of passers-by beside him, he learned that was Princess Geahua, the little girl who'd pressed an apricot into his hand at the well's edge. This time it seemed more than just a fond memory. It had taken root. After that, through his days and nights at the cold window, every time he couldn't hold on, he thought climb a little higher, stand out a little more. Maybe one day she'd spare him a single glance from a high seat. Just one glance. Later, he really did pass as top scholar. On the day of the procession, he rode on horseback, back held perfectly straight, his gaze quietly sweeping the towers on both sides, searching all the while for a glimpse of Zhao Changing. Only afterward did he hear that the princess had been busy lounging that day and hadn't gone out at all. The breath he'd been holding suddenly deflated into emptiness. Later, at a palace banquet, he did see her. She was surrounded by others, dressed in splendor. Someone introduced him to step forward and bow. His voice came out a little tight. "Greetings, Your Highness." She was already seated, tilting her head, slowly looking him over from top to bottom. Lu and Huey's heart pounded hard, as if under examination. The top scholar is better looking than the third place one, I'll say her voice wasn't loud, just enough to drift into his ears. A light, weightless line, yet it struck a thundering crash inside his heart. After she said it, she looked away and went on chatting and laughing with the others. When Lu Yuan Hui retreated to his seat, his palms were drenched with sweat. He gripped his wine cup, looking down at the swaying reflection in it, that bit of light flickering bright and dim like that secret longing of his he could never show. Did she remember him? Perhaps. But what she remembered was merely that he was better looking than the third-place scholar. Those chance encounters afterward were in fact all carefully planned by him. Lu Yuan Hui began paying attention to the invitations going around, which families gathering, which banquet, would Zhao Changming attend. He always had to find out the news in advance. Once he dug it up, he'd sit calculating under the lamp how to bow and greet her so it would look proper, which robe to wear, to look refined, but not too deliberate. Last time he'd waited 3 days before approaching to make conversation. Would that seem too ordinary?
Lu Yuanhui, 你真是个笨蛋啊你。
When he actually saw her, he didn't dare look too long, lowered his eyes and bowed, his voice held flat and level. Just one greetings, your highness, and then he'd step aside. But out of the corner of his eye he stayed fixed on her, watching what hairpin she wore that day, what clothes, whether the corners of her lips curved up or pressed flat, and the way she usually looked at him was always about the same as looking at an object, a good-looking object, a useful object. The one time she truly lifted her eyes to look at him was at the hunting grounds. She galloped after a deer, charging like the wind toward the steep ravine. Lu Yuan Hui, don't be nervous, you can do this. Say something caring to her and you're sure to win her heart. You're being reckless. It could hurt at times. Lu Yuan Hui, what on earth are you even saying? No wonder even grandfather called you a boa. Was that any help? As usual, she turned to look at him, face taut, her brow knitting up. Top scholar. Quite the busybody, aren't you? Too late. Lu Yuan Hui, you really are an idiot. After that, whenever he saw her, spotting her from afar coming toward him, he'd instinctively avoid her. If he couldn't avoid her, he'd lower his eyes and bow, voice held flat and level, not daring a single extra word. Terrified one more syllable would make her more annoyed. But who could have guessed? That night when the palace banquet ended, he was walking out alone, when 2 of her people suddenly came up behind him, very politely tied him up, and then he should have pushed her away. That's what the books taught, but he didn't. At first Lu Yuan Hui really did mean to take the slow, gradual road, slow and steady, and the water finds its channel. Let the sun and moon turn to ash, and 2 hearts shine on each other. That little light of his, shining on Zhao Changming, was about as good as a blind man holding a lamp. That night was an accident, and also the most outrageous thing he'd done in his life. So outrageous that afterward he lay there, his head buzzing. Half of it the collapse of his sunny purity, half of it the dizziness of it actually coming true. The 2 forces twisted and tore at him, yanking his very soul to pieces. So the hanging and the wall ramming afterward, 7 parts of it was truly feeling it was all over. 3 parts was staking it all on a gamble, lose the bet, and he'd go home and hang himself, win it, and he didn't dare even imagine. What are you doing? Then what on earth do you want? He really did win the bet. Zhao Changming said she'd take responsibility, and he took her up on it fast, terrified she'd change her mind. This works. The decree was written, the match official, yet now he didn't know what the next step should be. The books didn't teach this. He'd read all the sages' books, and not one taught how to win a wise heart. Slow and steady, he thought. The days are still long, but Zhao Changming clearly wasn't one who could be held in place. She was like a flame, darting and burning here and there. One moment gone without a trace, the next teasing him again. He couldn't keep up and didn't dare chase too closely, afraid she'd find him a bother, afraid she'd find him cling. And those stirry books Zhao Changming threw at him. He opened one page, and his eyelids started twitching. What on earth is written here? What an outrage. He slammed it shut. He is burning fiercely. The morals of the age are sinking, people's hearts no longer pure. He reported the hating studio. During those Cold War days, Lu Yuan Hui really was out of ideas. He sought an audience with the emperor, meaning to ask for a way out. Don't be shy. In the end, his brother-in-law heard his purpose, stroked his chin, and smiled inscrutably. His advice nowhere near the proper path. 2 little figures fought in his head, one shouting absurd, the other earnestly thinking, what if it works, your majesty? Those last few instructions still buzzed in his ears, mixed with a touch of mischievous laughter. What in the world is all this? But Zhao Changming took neither the soft nor the hard approach. Those sages' principles of his were worth less than a fart to her. Maybe he had to try something different. The thought surfaced and startled even himself. Face and propriety had shattered to pieces on the ground. The moment Yao Changing turned and walked away, he steeled his heart. Lu Yu and Huey gradually figured out the trick of it. Yao Changing responded to softness, not foe. Reasoning worked worse than playing weak. That bit of restrained dependence of his, the grievance he occasionally let slip, worked far better than the grand way of the sages and those little schemes of his. Yao Changing wasn't entirely in the dark about it either. However many banquets there were, he couldn't run into her 7 times out of 10. The other 3 were ladies' banquets. No outsiders invited. Otherwise, how could he be so certain Lu Yu and Huey liked her? Lu Yu and Huey, I see you're not rigid in the least. You're plenty shrewd. Those 800 schemes of yours, you've turned every last one of them on me. Your Highness flatters me. Your Highness flatters me. Come take a look at this memorial. Your Highness, a consort must avoid suspicion. This writing on the document. Who wrote it? I, the princess. In whose name was it submitted? My. And whose seal? So once it's sent out, what does it have to do with you? Lu Yu and Huey, and even if it did have to do with you, we too